is Mark Gunn Media.
Hit it!
Welcome to GunnShots, straight from the hip. I'm your host, Mark Gunn. The views expressed on this program are those of the host and guests and not necessarily reflective of anyone or any entity associated with this broadcast. This episode is brought to you by WhenWeAllVote.org.
Why should I vote? Nothing ever changes. The system is rigged. Why bother? Whether you're trying to get dinner on the table after working a double shift, dropping baby off with grandma, or studying for exams, voting can feel like the furthest thing from your mind. You might even feel like it's just not worth it. But that's exactly what some people want you to think. The truth is, when we stay home, things stay the same or they get worse. But when we all vote, we get new ideas and new energy. We get leaders who share our values and listen to our voices. That's how we change America. And that's why it's so important to register right now and vote this November. And in every election, go to whenweallvote.org or text We All Vote to 97779 to get started and know that your vote will make a difference. Be sure to get registered and get to the polls on November 6th.
This episode, America, you still don't get it. It's Wednesday morning, September 23rd, 2020. I'm Mark Gunn, and here in Louisville, Kentucky, we are preparing to hear from Attorney General Daniel Cameron, who has been waiting to hear from the grand jury regarding the murder of Breonna Taylor. So as we prepare for that verdict, one way or the other, the city of Louisville and the National Guard have been putting measures in place in order to, quote, protect citizens. A large section of downtown Louisville has been blocked off to vehicular traffic. There are posted checkpoints in various entry points into the downtown area as they prepare for the worst. Now, what they are willingly ignoring is that the protests have gone on for 118 days, and they have been peaceful on the part of the protesters. We've had some spates of violence and destruction. Those incidents were caused by outsiders of the movement, white supremacists, the National Guard, and even members of law enforcement. So while they are counting on violence from the protesters have other things in mind. So what I wanted to do with this episode, because we are facing something that we haven't seen in quite a long time, wanted to take you back some 28 years. I was a resident in Los Angeles during the time of the Rodney King Uprising. 6 days of violence and destruction, never addressing the underlying issue of racial inequity and police brutality. So as a means of taking you back to those of you that are old enough to remember, and for those of you that have never heard about this, giving you a first-hand account of what happened. So, with the help of CNN's Don Lemon, let's go back 28 years. Here's what happened in Los Angeles.
He sustains more than 50 baton blows and shocks by a taser gun. Little does he know, his arrest and brutal beating are captured on video by George Holliday, who lived in the apartments across the street.
I was just amazed at what was happening, feeling, what the hell could he be doing, could he have done to deserve such punishment?
2 days after the beating, the video is broadcast around the world. Instantly, Rodney King's name becomes a battle cry against injustice. The officer's actions are exposed. King has his evidence. The video ignites a firestorm of outrage. Rodney King is released without being charged. As Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley launches an investigation, so does the FBI. Even the president demands answers.
It was sickening to see the beating that was rendered. There's no way, in my view, to explain that away. It was outrageous.
The district attorney for L.A. County moves quickly. Indictments are announced.
LAPD officer Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wynn, Theodore Brasino, and Sergeant Stacy Kuhn have been indicted for assault with a deadly weapon.
But racial tensions continue to mount. There is so much publicity and anger. The officer's trial is moved out of L.A. to the predominantly white community of Simi Valley. February 3rd, 1992. Exactly 11 months after Rodney King's controversial arrest, the trial of the 4 white officers charged in the beating gets underway.
Immediately after this incident, you made a call for a rescue ambulance, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Armed with the videotape as a star witness, Rodney King feels a conviction is all but certain and justice will be served. But will a jury of 10 whites, 1 Hispanic, 1 Filipino American, and no blacks agree? Nearly 3 months into the trial, a hushed courtroom anxiously awaits the verdict.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant, Stacy C. Kuhn, not guilty.
This is a reaction just outside the courthouse. Sheriff's deputies having to protect Sergeant Stacy Kuhn as he makes his way to his car. Movie director John Singleton is in the crowd and makes a chilling prediction.
By having this verdict, what these people done, they lit the fuse to a bomb.
Within just 2 hours after the verdicts, downtown Los Angeles is a war zone. Looters go on a rampage. Innocent people are randomly attacked. White truck driver Reginald Denny just happens to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He hasn't heard about the riots when he exits the interstate. Within minutes, Denny is attacked.
My right window broke, and that time I was extremely frightened. It's a strange feeling to be scared.
That's all Denny can remember about the beating.
So I pushed him over to the other seat, and I told him I'm here to save his life.
Green drives Denny's truck to the hospital, arriving just in time.
It gave me glory to my heart that I saved another human being.
Bobby Green is just one of many heroes that day. Despite all the calls for calm, the rioting continues. The president deploys federal troops.
And let me assure you, I will use whatever force is necessary to restore order.
But as the city burns around them, some business owners will take matters into their own hands. As flames spread across wide sections of the city, Rodney King remains secluded, but stunned by the magnitude of destruction. Entire neighborhoods are reduced to rubble. By the end of the first day of rioting, 12 people have already been killed. While much of the looting is random and the perpetrators are as diverse as the city itself, Radio Korea broadcaster Richard Choi notices a disturbing pattern. Choi says callers are telling him Korean American-owned businesses are being specifically targeted. And while their pleas for help seem to be ignored, their property is ransacked by roving bands of looters.
I wish this whole thing was a joke, something I dreamed that I could wake up from.
We came this country to want to have some kind of a American dream.
Long before the riots, tensions had been simmering between some black residents and the Korean American merchants.
There was a language barrier. There wasn't an understanding. There was gruff treatment. There was poor communication skills.
Those simmering racial tensions ignite after the Rodney King verdict. As billowing smoke moves closer to the financial center of Koreatown, attorney David Kim urges merchants to take action.
They were telling Korean American merchants in Koreatown to evacuate.
By defending themselves, Kim says, Koreatown became a buffer zone in the battle to prevent the loss of more lives and property.
The fact that Koreatown itself was...
As the riots enter a fourth day, the man at the center of the storm emerges from obscurity, his voice visibly shaken. King speaks to the world.
People, I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along?
And also Mayor Tom Bradley, Los Angeles Mayor Tom Bradley, extending the curfew area in this city of Los Angeles.
It takes 6 days to restore order. The damage is staggering. 55 people lost their lives. Another 2,000 are injured. Property damages exceed $1 billion. 1 week later, President Bush makes a personal visit to Koreatown to ease tensions.
It helped the Korean Americans because they felt like the system had abandoned them.
The events that unfold after the jury's verdict present a watershed moment in the history of race relations across the country. But in L.A., those relations are soon tested again. As another trial keeps the city on edge. Nearly a year after riots and rage rock Los Angeles, L.A. braces itself for the outcome of a second trial. Under pressure from President Bush, the Department of Justice files federal charges against the 4 police officers acquitted in Simi Valley. The question at the heart of this case, were Rodney King's civil rights violated?
There was palpable tension. The Roybal building where this trial was held.
We have tried to get along with minorities.
Keep my people in slavery. He didn't say that. He didn't say that. Keep my people in slavery. He didn't say that.
There are noticeable differences between the two trials. This one would take place in downtown Los Angeles, and Rodney King would take the witness stand. Prosecutors intentionally kept King out of the courtroom for the first trial.
I just want to get up here and testify and just tell the truth.
Another difference, this time there are 2 African-American jurors. Journalist Lou Cannon says the fear of riots loomed.
Are you saying that you walked into a courtroom with a client who you believed had no chance?
Pretty much so, yeah.
I was so positive and knew in my heart that I'm not even worried about it. If they don't call me, we're still going to win.
Rodney King takes a witness stand and testifies that racial epithets were used during the beating. His testimony would spark a war of words between the legal teams.
Mike Stone knows that the word wiggin was used.
Did your client ever use the word wiggin?
Absolutely not. No one out there did.
He's going to kill you. And that's when you see him getting up.
He is still willing to stand up in this courtroom before a jury and say they said the word wiggin, and then say, well, maybe it was killer. I'm not sure.
Lawrence Powell, accused of making the racial slur, also disputed King's testimony.
Rodney King is no doubt a liar. The evidence bears that out.
First you said it wasn't racial, then you said it was, and then you said you heard the N-word, and then you said you didn't.
Oh, no, I heard it. My mom said, whatever you do, don't say it was racism. So I respect her for that at that time.
After 45 days, the federal trial ends.
I think we will be acquitted, but that 1% of, that we might not be is real worrisome.
On the 6th day of deliberations, the jury reaches a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Stacey C. Coon, guilty. We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant guilty.
2 out of the 4 officers are found guilty.
It was like, God.
Sergeant Stacey Coon and Officer Lawrence Powell were both sentenced to 2.5 years in federal prison. The verdict seemed to satisfy the community. No riots erupted. Rodney King's lawsuit would determine how much money, if any, he received for his injuries. King's civil suit against the city of Los Angeles was his 3rd trial in 3 years. The jury awarded Rodney King $3.8 million. As for the officers convicted in the Rodney King beating, both Powell and Coon still live in Southern California. They declined our request to be interviewed.
That was a look back at the Rodney King Uprising from 28 years ago. And as a resident of Los Angeles at that time, everything that you just heard brought back a lot of painful memories. In fact, I remember driving through Florence and Normandy shortly after the riots had ended, and I was with an FBI agent. There was a smell of burned everything in the air that permeated everything. And even though the skies were clear on that particular day, it was a smell that you couldn't get out of your nostrils, you couldn't get it out of your clothes. And to this day, 28 years later, there are still some sections of Los Angeles that have never, ever fully recovered. As we await the decision in the Breonna Taylor case, there's a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety. As a matter of fact, the tension is palpable. Some would say that that's what the authorities are counting on. But again, we've had 118 days of largely peaceful protests with incidents coming from forces outside of the movement. Coming up, I'm going to take you back to a conversation I had with a friend of mine some 22 years ago. That friend is KRS-One. Reason being, some of the same things that we talked about back then are the same things that we're dealing with now.
Mitch McConnell,
right after this.
36 years in Congress, helping insurance companies block affordable health care. Amy McGrath, a Marine and a mom.
I'm Amy McGrath, and I approve this message because every family should have affordable health care.
Right now, 1 in 5 eligible people in this country are not even registered to vote. And I know it's not because people don't care. We all care. The only way to make change in this country is to get out and vote for the change you're looking for. What if this year we actually did that? What if this year every eligible American decided to step up and be a voter? What can actually happen when we all vote? Imagine the kind of leaders we can elect.
Leaders who are committed to creating a better world for my girls.
When we all vote,
we have the power to shape the future.
My father was deported when I was 8 years old. If you can't vote, you should vote. Where we all vote, we translate our dreams into change.
Register to vote today, not tomorrow, not the next day, but today.
That means all of us.
When we all vote, that's how change happens in America. I love you all so much. Let's get it done.
For downloads of this and past episodes and information about all the multimedia services we offer, log on to our website at www.markgunmedia.com. That's markgunmedia.com. Welcome back to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. My name is Mark Gunn. This episode, America, you still just don't get it. Wednesday the 23rd, and we're watching a very fluid situation here in Louisville. And by means of full disclosure, in addition to doing this podcast, I'm also the program director of one of the local radio stations. So in the interest of serving the public trust, we're waiting for all sorts of latest information so that we can pass it on to our listeners. And in turn, I wanted to pass this on to you because things here in Louisville right now are very, very different. So no matter where you're listening to this in the country or in the world, we are sitting on a potential disaster here. But honestly, I've got a lot more faith in my people than apparently the Louisville Metro Police Department does. So we'll see what happens, so we'll keep you posted there. Want to take you back to a conversation I had with rapper, educator, entrepreneur, krs-one. We were talking about some things that he was up to as he was getting ready to retire from the rap game. And we touched on some issues that were relevant back then, and as you'll hear, to this day.
Is this Mark Gunn from Cincinnati?
Yes, sir.
Word? I heard a lot about you, man. What's up?
Well, actually, we met a few years ago. You'll probably remember this. I was a music director in Los Angeles.
Oh.
And back then, I was responsible for initiating a music policy that caused a whole lot of drama.
Rap always has sparked controversy with its in-your-face rage. But as rap has muscled its way to the top of the charts, has it grown too violent and vicious? The folks at KACE Radio in Los Angeles think so.
When you take a record like Indo Smoke, which is a love song to pot as far as I'm concerned, there's no social benefit to that.
Pass me the joint so I could take a toke. So KACE banned rap it calls negative and destructive.
We're looking at songs whose lyrics glorify violence, glorify the gang lifestyle, glorify disrespecting of women, are blatantly sexually explicit.
I applaud it. I mean, I think it's a very good move. It's a positive move for not only for my children, but for the younger generation.
You were basically one of the first rappers to come to our support.
Right.
And I've always, respected you and thanked you publicly for that. And it's a pleasure to talk to you again, man.
Thanks, man. Wow, look at that.
So how you living, KRS-One?
I'm chilling, man. Just trying to uplift our people. You know what that is.
That's right. Knowledge reigns supreme over nearly everyone.
Word up.
A young man has been a part of the old school and hopefully teaching a lot of the folks in the new school about what time it really is.
Yeah, word.
So what's been up with you since the last time I talked with you? I know you've been doing the touring thing, a couple of new projects coming out, still keeping things on the positive tip, lectures, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I'm really getting into education these days. I only got one more album on Jive Records, the label I'm with now. This album that's out now called I Got Next is my 8th album. But after this, I put out one more album on Jive Records, and I'm done. But what I'm thinking about is going into education, building what we now call a temple of hip-hop, in which it's the first hip-hop private school we're looking to erect and have that done. And it teaches MCing, DJing, breaking, graffiti art, health, economics, and management. And this is where KRS-One's life or forward movement is going into. I'm in my 30s now. I'm 32 years old now, and I feel like I'm 18. But I'm 32 now, and I'm really thinking about, as an elder, I guess I would even call myself in the hip hop world. What am I really doing to organize this culture? And that's something that a lot of the elders in this culture, the creators of the culture, really have not really looked at seriously because they never had a chance to.
Right.
So it's very hard to put out. No, let me take that back. It's not hard to put out 8 albums.
No.
But it does take technique. You do have to have a strategy. You got to know what you're doing. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm just going to write this old record and hope it come out, and I hope and I hope and I hope."
Right, because a lot of times what you're hearing a lot of days, and this is not a diss on the new school, but it's just basically people putting together words, thinking they're flowing, but they're not really saying it. Like James Brown used to say, talking loud and saying nothing.
And nothing. Well, see, that comes from cultural illiteracy, is what I call it. Not that our people have cultural illiteracy, because they are the culture, but the academia, the people in Harvard, Spelman, Vassar, Yale, all these people in these universities, they don't understand how to articulate our culture back to the people that need it. And they teach us about Christopher Columbus and George Washington because they understand that culture. But when the public school system and the public library system and just basic public education grows into or becomes more mature and begins to understand hip-hop culture, then we'll be able to teach our people better because we'll be culturally literate. The only way to teach people is with what they already have.
Exactly.
You can't come with a foreign concept like George Washington and expect someone to understand that, like really get into it, benefit themselves on a guy that lived 200 years ago. It had nothing, actually more than that, and it had nothing to really do with where you at and where you going.
Right.
So really it comes down to the academia, the leadership. Where is the leadership? It's a two-way street. The people, the culture, I would say this directly to my hip-hop culture, to everyone listening to this article. I'm so used to talking. I'm so used to talking to magazines.
Right.
Listening to this interview live now. And one thing I would say to them is that we have to take our health, our wealth, and our awareness of ourselves more seriously.
And this is where you keep espousing the practice of metaphysics.
Yes, exactly. Love yourself first and know the true reality of things. It's basic common sense. Health. Try. I mean, it's hard. I know we live in the inner cities, but try to cut down on the sugar, the salt, the dairy products, the flour. Try.
Right. And just as a reference point, go back to the album Edutainment and check out the song Beef.
Oh, look at how you coming right now. But see, you know what also? See, you are obviously educated in this particular philosophy, and there are a lot of people who have listened to KRS-One's albums and gotten something out of it. But you know what I'm faced with today? My audience, I'm dealing with this new audience. This is probably one of the problems of longevity.
Exactly. You have an older audience like me, because I'm a little bit older than you, that was listening right around when you and Scott LaRock got started.
Exactly. And see, but now you guys are, programming stations, playing the music, and then also just to take you as a person, Mark, your type of person has become an attorney, a medical, and a doctor, has taken up political science, has become, in other words, a part of the establishment, like KRS-One.
Right.
Like KRS-One, there's a saying that says, when you're young, if you ain't be thinking revolutionary and trying to destroy this whole system, you ain't got no heart. But if when you get older and you have not become a part of this system, you ain't got no brain.
And there's something to be said for.
And this is where and not that I'm saying you got to join the system, because there's a lot with this system I ain't even trying to see. But what I am saying is that whether we like it or not, we will eventually become the people that we are arguing about today.
Right.
There was a time, back in the days when I put out Criminal Minded, you wasn't obviously you wasn't in Ohio.
Right.
And obviously you wasn't programming stations. Wherever your career took you, you was not there. Now, and throughout this time period, not only yourself, but thousands of other hip-hop heads have now become DJs, radio programmers, marketers of products, and so on, and have went into the academia, went into business, so on and so on. And the question is, well, now, what is hip-hop culture today? When I first started, it was DJing, breaking, MCing, and graffiti.
Right.
But today, it's video programmers. It's also video directors. It's also the guy that's now filming the video. The guy behind the camera grew up on Paid in Full.
Exactly.
The doctor looking over your kids today has a copy of Long Live the King. And this is the reality of what we got to look at when we look at our culture. We have to look at what is real. What is real? What's real is we are growing up. The ones who are surviving are growing up. We're becoming more mature. We are becoming more educated. We are growing up.
Exactly.
As we grow up, the more educated you become, the more control you have over your society. And that's the point I'd like to point out to everyone listening now.
Mm-hmm.
Be educated. Be educated. Get education. Don't just react because something happened. They beat Rodney King. Let's all run out now and burn down everything. I mean, in one breath, release that tension in one breath. And another, we can argue rebellion, revolution, and riot. We can argue that. But on another breath, then you have to ask yourself,
why is that?
Why is that?
Right.
Why? And let me get into that. And then I tell you this, when you become educated and you see the truth about the American system, you become to understand that all the people you're arguing with, you will soon be them. And you have to ask yourself, who will I be when I become them?
Exactly. Because, like you said, the culture, just to sum up real quick, the culture has now gone from, baggy jeans and Kangols to anywhere from baggy jeans, saggy jeans to Armani suits.
Exactly. And soon, now imagine, with the same way we look back on Shaft. Remember Shaft?
Right.
You look back on and be like, yo, man, his gear was dope. But
right.
To the level he was corny. That's what people have to realize with Moschino and Chanel and all of this stuff today.
Mm-hmm.
I might have to beep that. All of this stuff today, people wear Moschino, Chanel, this, that. But in 10 years, we're going to look back and be like
I can't believe I wore that.
Yo, you look corny, kid. But the ones who just wore white or black or cream or, solid colors and no labels, those people last forever.
That's me.
Hey, there we go.
So once again, the album is I Got Next. You got one more, and then it's off to the business of
Temple of Hip Hop for me, man.
Oh man!
And we jump into a cultural thing. I'm going to lessen my recording activity. I'll always record and probably always perform, but I'm going to lessen it and probably record and perform only under the auspices of the Temple of Hip Hop.
And of course,
because we have got people with money, with influence, and with a strategy, such as myself, we've got to spend our money wisely.
There you go.
Otherwise, we destroy our own selves. We've got to educate our public. We've got to unify hip-hop as a culture, and we got to think about where we're going with our culture. That's the point to KRS-One. That's the point to the album I Got Next. That's the point to the Puffy remix that a lot of people are confused about these days. About why did Chris do a record with Puffy? What is that all about?
South Bronx.
sitting and you're wondering how we keep it coming in. KRS and Puff again, the pushing and shoving in the neighborhood, you bugging when we coming in, ruling.
With more Wildcats than Rick Pitino, I mean,
just cooling like Levert, I do work.
And one thing I just got to say very briefly, that record is a very important cultural record that Puffy and I got together and tried to present to the world.
Right.
We're showing that no matter who you are, player or hustler, whatever you claim to be, or scholar, philosopher, at the end of the day, it's all one hip-hop culture, and we've got to learn to strategize together to make both of us last longer.
Exactly. And, the one thing that I got always have gotten out of hip hop, even, listening to it when I was younger, is the fact that it does educate. The best hip hop always leaves you something to think about.
That is called edutainment.
Exactly. KRS-One, I got next. Looking forward to the Temple of Hip Hop. Maybe I'll get a chance to visit, man.
Oh, no question. You already on our roster.
Oh, there you go. And thank you for the class today.
Thank you for the classroom.
All right. Much love, man. Much love.
KRS-One.
Thanks, man. I'm
from
out.
22 years ago, a conversation we had about some of the same issues that we're facing today. One of the blessings I've had in this life is that over the last 20-some-odd years, Chris and I have become good friends. So it was kind of a kick to hear this conversation, but in the context of this episode, well, it was a little bit more on the serious side. So as we wrap up things on this episode, remember, we are still waiting to hear from Attorney General Daniel Cameron regarding the Breonna Taylor case. And things are kind of tense here in Louisville. Again, sections of downtown have been blocked off, and the tension is very palpable. So we will keep you updated. We may be getting a supplemental episode to this one, so if anything jumps off, we will definitely let you know. And we're facing this issue all over the country right now. And all eyes are on Louisville, Kentucky at this point. So if you get a second, say a prayer for us. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to Gunshots Straight from the Hip. The views expressed are those of the host and guests and not reflective of any business entity or anyone associated with this broadcast. If you have any comments or want more information on how to be a sponsor, log on to our website at markgunmedia.com or call us at 502-407-0283. That's 502-407-0283. Thank you for listening. Mark Gun Media. No hype, no hoopla, just damn good work.